Right now, two fires burning in the same forest complex in central British Columbia have grown so large, so fast, that together they now cover more ground than the city of Toronto. One of them jumped from roughly 100,000 hectares to over 126,000 hectares in a matter of days. Add its neighboring fire to that total, and you are looking at a burned footprint pushing past 160,000 hectares, all inside a single wildfire complex, all still active and all still growing. Meanwhile, more than 8,000 people across the province have been ordered out of their homes. Another 7,000 are on alert to leave at a moment's notice, and the head of BC Wildfire Service Operations says he is watching fire behavior he has never seen before in his career. This is where things stand in British Columbia, as the crisis that started with a summer cold front has turned into one of the most dangerous wildfire stretches the province has faced in years. Let's start with the number that anchors everything else. As of the most recent update from BC Wildfire Service, the province has just over 100 active wildfires burning at once, with close to half of them classified as out of control. That means fire crews have not established containment lines, and the fire is free to keep spreading in whatever direction wind and terrain take it. Roughly 20 more are in the being held category, meaning crews have stopped forward progress but haven't fully locked the fire down. The rest are listed as under control. Since April of this fire season, British Columbia has now recorded more than 3,000 square kilometers of burned land, which works out to over 300,000 hectares. Most of that damage is concentrated in one region, the Caribou, home to the fire complex now dominating headlines across the country, the Big Bar complex. To really understand why this season escalated so quickly, it helps to understand the specific weather event that lit the match. In late July, and again during the final weekend of the month, a series of dry thunderstorms rolled through the southern and central interior. Dry lightning is different from the kind most people picture when they think of a summer storm. It forms when a thunderstorm develops enough energy to produce lightning, but the rain falling from that storm evaporates before it ever reaches the ground, a process called virga, which is common in hot, low-humidity air. The result is a storm that delivers all of the ignition risk of lightning with none of the moisture that would normally help suppress a new fire. Over one especially active weekend, BC Wildfire, service recorded more than 2,000 lightning strikes across the province, and more than 20 new fires were sparked from that single event alone. That is the mechanism behind much of what has happened since. It wasn't one fire spiraling out of control. It was dozens of new ignition points appearing almost simultaneously across already tinder-dry forest, arriving right as a cold front brought strong, erratic winds to fan them. To understand how the Big Bar complex specifically got this big, you have to go back to mid-July. The 59 Creek fire was first spotted southeast of Big Bar Lake in the southern Caribou, believed to have started from a lightning strike. Within days, it had grown to roughly 4,000 hectares and forced an evacuation order covering more than 100 properties around the lake. Not far away, the Pear Lake fire ignited east of Pear Lake, near the community of Clinton. At first, these were treated as separate, manageable incidents. That did not last. A cold front swept through the southern interior over the final weekend of July, bringing strong, erratic winds that shifted direction more than once, and those winds turned both fires into a different kind of problem entirely. By the end of that weekend, the Pear Lake fire had already climbed past 100,000 hectares, making it one of the largest single wildfires burning anywhere in Canada. Fire behavior specialists reported the blaze exhibiting what's called rank 4 and rank 5, activity at its head, the two highest categories used to describe fire intensity, meaning fast-moving crown fire capable of throwing embers well ahead of the main front. Those wind-driven embers are exactly what pushed the fire north and east, crossing Highway 97 south of Clinton, and forcing the firefighter camp stationed inside the village itself to pack up and relocate roughly 40 kilometers north to 99 Mile House. When your own firefighting base camp has to evacuate the fire it's fighting, that tells you how serious the situation had become. By the most recent size estimates, the Pear Lake fire alone sits at nearly 127,000 hectares. Its neighbor in the same management complex, the French Bar Creek fire, has grown to just over 39,000 hectares. A third fire in the group, Rim Lake, adds several thousand more. Put those together, and the Big Bar complex as a whole is now pressing up against, and by some counts already past, 160,000 hectares of burned landscape. For scale, that is larger than the entire city of Los Angeles. It is larger than the 5 boroughs of New York City combined, and this fire ignited less than a month ago. The human toll around Clinton has been severe. BC Wildfire Service says roughly 120 properties have suffered structural loss from the Pear Lake fire, and that figure does not even include losses inside the village of Clinton itself, where assessments are still ongoing. Evacuation. Orders remain in place for the Thompson-Nicola Regional District and the Caribou Regional District. covering the areas around Green Lake, Big Bar Lake, and the corridor surrounding Highway 97. That highway, one of the main arteries connecting Kamloops to the Caribou, has sections closed with no confirmed reopening date, and Drive BC continues to warn travelers to avoid the corridor entirely. The response to the Big Bar complex has been massive by any standard. Hundreds of firefighting personnel, dozens of helicopters, and heavy equipment crews have been assigned to the complex, supported by structure protection specialists working block by block to defend homes in the fire's path. That effort came with a scare of its own this week. A helicopter working on Big Bar. Complex operations went down in a lake near 70 Mile House, an area where dozens of homes and outbuildings have already burned. The pilot, the only person on board, was taken to hospital with what officials describe as minor injuries. The Transportation Safety Board and WorkSafe BC are now investigating exactly what happened, a reminder that the aircraft doing the heaviest, most dangerous work in this crisis are themselves operating in extreme and unpredictable conditions. It's worth pausing on what structure protection crews are actually doing during an event like this, because it's different from what most people picture when they hear firefighting. Around Clinton and along the edges of the Big Bar complex, teams have been working street by street and property by property, wrapping propane tanks in fire-resistant material, clearing brush and flammable debris away from foundations, setting up portable sprinkler systems on rooftops, and identifying which homes are defensible with the resources available and which are not. It is methodical, unglamorous work, and it happens under the same smoke, heat, and unpredictable wind shifts that are driving the main fire. When officials say roughly 120 properties suffered structural loss around Pear Lake, that number reflects both homes that structure protection crews couldn't reach in time and homes that were simply overrun too quickly by wind-driven embers landing well ahead of the visible fire line. While the Caribou has produced the largest single fire complex, the fire that triggered the most dramatic overnight evacuations was the Bradley Creek Wildfire in the North Okanagan. This fire tells you almost everything you need to know about how quickly conditions can turn deadly serious in this kind of drought year. It was first discovered late on a Friday night on Okanagan Indian Band land near the north end of Okanagan Lake, west of the city of Vernon. Within roughly 24 hours, it had grown past 1,000 hectares. By the following afternoon, it had more than doubled again, driven by wind gusts recorded as high as 115 kilometers an hour at higher elevations and around 80 kilometers an hour at ground level. Those winds didn't blow steadily in one direction either. They shifted from the west, pushing the fire toward Westside Road along Okanagan Lake and forcing that road to close, and then swung around to blow from the south, driving the fire northeast directly across Highway 97. Residents along the west shore of Okanagan Lake described waking up to an orange glow lighting the night sky and having only minutes to grab what they could before driving out. The damage has been extensive. Officials now say at least 200 homes have been destroyed by the Bradley Creek fire alone, one of the highest structure loss totals from a single wildfire in the province this year. The city of Vernon opened an emergency reception center to process evacuees. The mayor has publicly acknowledged the city is preparing contingency plans in case evacuations need to expand further into town. Evacuation orders remain active for the Okanagan Indian Band, the township of Spalumcheen, and portions of the North Okanagan Regional District in Splatson First Nation territory. As if the North Okanagan didn't have enough to deal with, a second major fire ignited just to the south along the same lake. The Quilpatuck Creek wildfire, suspected to be human-caused, started on the west side of Okanagan Lake near the community of Fintry in the central Okanagan. In one 24-hour stretch alone, this fire grew from roughly 7.5 square kilometers to more than 11 square kilometers, an increase of over 50% in a single day. That growth forced the Regional District of Central Okanagan to expand its evacuation order to cover more than 2,600 properties, an increase of over 400 properties compared to the day before, with evacuation alerts now covering hundreds more in the Shelter Cove, Secret Point, and Cinnabar Creek areas. Westside Road, already closed further north because of Bradley Creek, is now effectively cut off along its entire length because of this second fire burning along the same corridor. The fire knocked out power to well over 1,000 BC Hydro customers when it took down transmission infrastructure early in its run. It's also worth understanding why Westside Road has become such a flashpoint in this crisis specifically. It's a narrow, winding, largely single-lane corridor that hugs the western shore of Okanagan Lake, connecting a string of rural and semi-rural communities, including Fintry, Shelter Cove, Kalini Beach, and Vernon's outlying neighborhoods to the rest of the region. There's no easy alternate route for most of these communities, which means that when a fire threatens the road itself, it doesn't just cut off travel. It can complicate evacuation logistics for everyone living along that shoreline. With both the Bradley Creek fire pressing in from the north and Quilpatuck Creek burning along the same corridor from the south, emergency planners have effectively had to treat the entire stretch as a single connected risk zone rather than two separate incidents. If you widen the lens beyond the Caribou and the Okanagan, the picture doesn't get any better. The Southeast Fire Center, covering the Kootenay region, has been dealing with a cluster of more than 24 out-of-control fires simultaneously, most of them sparked during the same lightning event that ignited the Caribou fires. Names like Tower Creek, Matthew Creek, Jumbo Creek, Calamity Creek, and Poplar Creek have all appeared on evacuation notices at various points this summer. There has been some good news out of the East Kootenay specifically. The Waite Creek wildfire, which had triggered its own evacuation order, and alert near Ta Creek was fully rescinded this week after crews got the upper hand, and portions of the alert around St. Mary Lake have also been lifted. It's a small sign that containment is achievable when weather cooperates, even in a season this severe. On the coast, the Brunswick Creek wildfire near Boston Bar has been burning since early July and remains one of the longest-running active fires in the province, with an evacuation order still in place for Electoral Area A in the Fraser Valley Regional District and for Boston Bar First Nation. This fire, along with the nearby Anderson Creek fire, which has burned over 10,000 hectares and is now listed as 100% contained, and the smaller Signal Hill fire near Pemberton rounds out the Coastal Fire Center's most serious incidents. It's worth noting that not every headline out of the Kootenays this week has been bad news. Beyond the Waite Creek rescission, several of the region's out-of-control fires, including some in the Tower Creek and Matthew Creek groupings, have seen their growth rates slow considerably compared to when they first ignited in mid to late July. Fire crews attribute part of that to more favorable terrain and access in some drainages, which allows for direct ground attack rather than relying purely on aerial suppression. It's a useful reminder that out of control is a suppression status classification, not necessarily a description of a fire actively racing across the landscape at that moment. Some out-of-control fires are simply too large or remote to fully declare contained yet, even when their day-to-day growth has slowed. Given the scale of what's burning across multiple fire centers at once, British Columbia has had to look outside its own borders for help. Roughly 1,400 firefighting personnel are currently working incidents across the province, and that number has been supplemented by international reinforcements. Crews from Mexico have arrived in the province this week, with the latest group of 100 firefighters landing in Abbotsford specifically to help battle the Brunswick Fire Complex near Boston Bar. Premier David Eby personally welcomed the arriving crews, a gesture that underscores just how stretched domestic resources have become. Alberta and Australia have also been named as sources of additional personnel and aircraft, as the province works through what officials are calling a multi-week resourcing plan. What makes this season different from a typical bad fire year isn't just the number of fires or the acreage burned, it's the underlying conditions driving them. Cliff Chapman, BC Wildfire Services Director of Wildfire Operations, put it about as bluntly as an official can. He told reporters this week that crews are seeing fuel conditions they have never encountered before and fire behavior and growth rates that go beyond anything experienced in the province up to this point. He called the current situation explosive and extremely dangerous. That's not hedge language. That's a career wildfire manager telling the public that the rulebook built from past seasons doesn't fully apply anymore. There's a reason international crews are being brought in rather than simply stretching domestic staff further. Firefighting personnel operate under strict fatigue management rules, rotating through set shift lengths with mandatory rest periods, precisely because exhausted crews on a fast-moving fire line are a safety liability, both to themselves and to the effectiveness of the response. Bringing in fresh, fully rested crews from Mexico, Australia, and other provinces isn't just about adding bodies. It's about maintaining the operational tempo needed to run 24-hour suppression efforts across dozens of simultaneous incidents without burning out the people doing the work. Part of the explanation lies in a drought that has been building for years, not weeks. The Okanagan, the Caribou, and the Thompson region have all been dealing with a multi-year moisture deficit, and the deep organic layers of soil and forest litter that normally hold some residual dampness, even in summer, are now bone dry. When those deep fuels dry out, fires don't just burn the surface grass and brush. They burn downward into the root systems and buried duff layers, which is part of why so many fires this season have shown holdover behavior, smoldering underground for days with little visible smoke before flaring back to life once temperatures climb and humidity drops. BC Wildfire Service has explicitly flagged this risk heading into the coming days, warning that lightning-caused fires from recent storms may still be quietly burning beneath the surface, waiting for the next stretch of hot, dry weather to reignite without warning. And that stretch of hot, dry weather is exactly what's arriving. After the brief cooling and light winds that gave crews a short reprieve earlier this week, BC Wildfire Service says hot, dry conditions have returned to the province, with the potential for increased fire activity and a real risk of new lightning-caused ignitions on top of the fires already burning. Air quality has deteriorated significantly as a result. Wildfire smoke has spread across most of southern British Columbia, and much of the interior is currently sitting under an orange-level air quality warning, meaning health risk from smoke exposure is considered very high. If you live anywhere in the Okanagan, the Thompson region, or the Kootenays, checking the air quality health index before spending extended time outdoors is not optional advice right now. It's a basic safety precaution, especially for children, seniors, and anyone with asthma or other respiratory conditions. This drought-driven fire behavior isn't unique to this summer, but the scale is notable even against BC's own recent history. The province has now logged well over 800 individual wildfire starts since April, a season total that, combined with the acreage already burned, puts this year on a trajectory comparable to some of the most destructive fire seasons on record in British Columbia, including 2017, 2018, and 2021, years that are still used as benchmarks for emergency planning in the province. What distinguishes a bad fire year from a genuinely historic one usually comes down to exactly the conditions officials are describing right now. Not just how many fires ignite, but how dry the deep fuel layers are, how erratic the wind patterns become, and how much relief, if any, arrives from late summer rain. So far this year, that relief has not materialized, and extended forecasts covering the interior show no significant precipitation on the horizon. There's also been an unusual complication for firefighting aircraft specifically. Because so much of the fire activity is concentrated around Okanagan Lake, BC Wildfire Service has had to publicly ask recreational boaters to clear areas of the lake, so that water bombers and helicopters can safely scoop water for aerial drops. It's a small detail, but it illustrates how a wildfire crisis this size touches parts of daily life that have nothing to do with the fire line itself. So what does all of this mean if you live in or are planning to travel through the affected regions? First, on the roads, Highway 97 remains closed in multiple sections near Clinton and near Vernon, and there is no confirmed timeline for when either closure will lift. The West Side Road along Okanagan Lake is closed along essentially its entire length because of the combined impact of the Bradley Creek and Quilpatuck Creek fires. Before you drive anywhere near the Caribou, the Thompson, or the Okanagan, check Drive BC directly rather than relying on GPS apps, which may not reflect emergency closures in real time. Second, on evacuation status. British Columbia uses two distinct levels, and understanding the difference matters. An evacuation alert means you should be actively preparing to leave, keeping essential documents, medications, and a go-bag ready, and staying tuned to local emergency notifications. An evacuation order means you're legally required to leave immediately. Across the province right now, roughly 8,000 people are under an evacuation order and another 7,000 are under alert. And those numbers have been changing daily, in some cases by the hour, as fires like Quilpatuck Creek continue to grow. If you're in an affected regional district, register for your local emergency notification system now, rather than waiting for a fire to reach your area. emergencyinfobc.gov.bc.ca is the best single source for current, verified alerts and orders, and it's updated continuously as regional districts issue new notices. Third, on air quality. With orange level warnings in effect across large parts of the southern interior, this is a good week to limit strenuous outdoor activity, keep windows closed when smoke is heavy, and to use air filtration indoors if you have access to it. Smoke-related health risk doesn't require you to be anywhere near an active fire line to affect you. For anyone trying to make sense of the raw numbers being thrown around this week, it helps to have a sense of scale in more familiar terms. 160,000 hectares is about 1,600 square kilometers, an area larger than the entire city of Calgary and its surrounding suburbs combined. 300,000 hectares, the season total burned so far province-wide, is roughly 3 times the size of the city of Toronto. These aren't abstract statistics for the people living in the Caribou and North Okanagan right now. They represent whole valleys, watersheds, and, in some cases, entire small communities that have either burned or sit directly in a fire's projected path. Wildlife biologists and forestry officials will spend years assessing the ecological impact on mule deer and caribou habitat, watershed health, and timber supply in the affected regions, work that typically continues long after the smoke clears and the news cameras move on. Zooming back out, the broader trajectory of this season is genuinely concerning. British Columbia typically sees its highest fire activity in August, and this year the province is entering that peak month already carrying more than 300,000 hectares of burned land, a multi-year drought with no meaningful rain in the medium-term forecast, and a fire behavior expert on record saying, "Conditions are unlike anything crews have dealt with before." None of that guarantees the worst outcome. Fires can be contained, weather can shift, and BC Wildfire Service's rescission of the Waite Creek evacuation order, This week shows that progress is possible even in a season like this one. But it does mean the margin for error is thin, and it means the situation across the Caribou, the Okanagan, and the Kootenays is likely to keep evolving quickly in the days ahead in both directions. For residents specifically, a few practical habits are worth building into your routine for as long as this event continues. Keep your phone charged and your emergency alert settings turned on rather than relying on word of mouth, since BC's emergency alert system is designed to push notifications directly to cell towers in a threatened area, even overriding do not disturb settings. Keep your vehicle's fuel tank at least half full at all times if you live in or near an evacuation alert zone, since gas station lines can back up quickly once an order is issued and roads start to fill with outbound traffic. And if an evacuation order is issued for your area, leave using the designated route provided by your regional district, rather than a route you'd normally take, since alternate roads may already be compromised by fire activity, smoke that reduces visibility to near zero, or emergency vehicle traffic moving in the opposite direction. The Big Bar complex alone, sitting near or above 160,000 hectares and still active, is a scale of fire that most people in British Columbia will never have seen in their lifetime. Combined with the destruction west of Vernon, the fast-moving fire threatening West Kelowna's outskirts, and dozens of smaller but still dangerous fires burning simultaneously across the Kootenays and the coast, this is shaping up to be a season that gets studied for years to come, the way 2017, 2018, and 2021 still are. If you found this update useful, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because this situation is moving fast, and I'll be back with updates as new information comes in from BC Wildfire Service and the regional districts on the front lines. Drop a comment if you're in one of the affected areas. I want to know how you're doing and what you're seeing where you are. And if you know someone in the Caribou, the Okanagan, the Thompson, or the Kootenays, share this video with them directly, because right now, accurate information fast can genuinely make the difference in how much warning someone has to get out safely. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next update.